Hello, and welcome to this week's version of Selah Freedom's show, Speaking Dangerously. This week we're going to be talking about some dangerous issues, and I'm Elizabeth Fisher, our president and CEO, and with me today I have my co-host, Kinsey Neeson, Director of Outreach and our Law Enforcement Liaison, and also joining us is our other co-host, Connie Rose, who is our Director of Survivor Leadership and Programming. And we decided on today's topic because there's a lot of talk about human trafficking today. It's sort of the hot topic, the buzzword, sort of the charity that everyone's focusing on. But beside the fact that people like to talk about the topic, there's a lot of issues underneath it that people are not so quick to talk about. And we wanted to bring those to the table today because you can't have a complete understanding of human trafficking without talking about the other issues. So we're going to jump into it today and get into some dangerous talk. So recently, Connie and I were speaking at a conference in Tampa. We were asked to speak, and it was a very diverse audience. There was faith-based people in the audience, there was elected officials of all faiths in the audience, law enforcement was there, people that wanted nothing to do with faith, and Connie and I were sort of towards the end. And there was a lot of people that took the platform to talk about the issues that they saw underlying, and they took a really firm stand on them. And we were a little controversial, and that's what we're going to do here today is talk about some of those controversial pieces because sexual abuse, homosexuality, abortion, I think I just named like all the hot topics that people do not want to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about today because they're sort of the foundation of the survivors that we deal with in this industry, who we serve. So I'm going to start with Connie. Connie Rose is a survivor herself, and I'm going to let her just sort of give you a picture. Not everybody's heard Connie's story. She's just going to touch on a nugget of it today, but to speak about what is the typical girl that we work with? What's her story? You know, these are local American girls, and I want Connie to sort of tell everybody about who it is we serve and why there's some stuff in there that people need to know.
So the women that we serve, and I'm going to start from the age of basically 12 to 17 is a prevention program that we have that we serve young teens, and then we serve women in our residential program and outreach mentorship program from 18 on up. And I always find it very interesting how many of them are survivors of incest, how many of them are survivors of sexual abuse, how many of them were in pornography. You know, I know for myself, you know, that's my story. You know, my backstory is, 14 years of incest with my dad. And all those 14 years, I was in so much pornography. In today's world, I would never be able to get it off the internet. And that's so many of the women and girls that we talk to, and boys and men. You know, if you really look at their backstory, but nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to really look at the fact that incest, really, something that goes on in people's families, is really could be the root. Pornography that a lot of people want to look at because they want to have a great sex life, that could be a root and a main cause of what's happening.
And we find that the girls that we work with don't have much of a voice because at 3, 4, 5 years old, they were told, don't tell anyone, it's a secret. Now Kinsey gets to work with these girls. She's basically our first contact with the girls on the street. So can you share a little bit about some of the stories of the girls that you've met out there and what people don't realize? I think the quick dismissive thing is, oh my gosh, human trafficking is a huge issue. It's horrible, we gotta do something. But is that compassion there when they see a girl walking down 41? And what do you want them to know? If you could have everybody's ear, which you do right now, give them a little backstory on that girl that looks a little bit hardened. She might look like she's in her late 20s. She might not look like someone you want to immediately go, oh, that poor girl. But help them understand how she got there, because that's the issue.
Yes, I think once you understand where this girl has come from, then you're more likely to help her and be empathetic. And so what I'm seeing over and over again, specifically in Bradenton and Sarasota, is this woman who started getting sexually abused at the age of 3 to 4. And now they're hooked on drugs. They've been in and out of relationships where there's more abuse. There's so much horrific rapes that have happened to them. And it's all intertwined with pornography, whether they're forced into videos or pictures that are put online. The amount of self-respect that they have for themselves is gone. They don't even see the difference of how they're being exploited, what's normal. And so really understanding the root and the background, but it generally starts with a lot of sexual abuse and it just continues. So if I see someone that's about 30 years old, we're talking about 2 decades worth of sexual abuse. So.
At a minimum. At a minimum. So Connie, help us get into a little girl's head, because that's what I want. My thing, I mean, we're sort of dealing with the outcome. Selah Freedom deals with the byproduct. We have the symptom of years and years of these hidden true problems. The fact that a child at 3, 4, 5 years old is sexually abused and doesn't know where to go with that, and there hasn't been. I love how you're starting to see how now we see like this person being exposed for years of sexual abuse, and this is coming to the surface and coming to the light. But help people understand, what is it like to be a child when you carry this secret, but you know it's your parent?
Well, you carry this weight. I mean, it's an enormous weight that you carry around. But really, more importantly, it's about, that's my daddy. That's my uncle, that's my mom, so that's my brother, someone that you love, someone that you trust, and this is what they're doing to me. And especially when they say to you, well, this is what we do. This is what all our family does. This is what our culture is. And if you're a little kid and you're being abused, you're going to believe that. Because first of all, look at the person that's abusing you, right? They're supposed to tell you the truth. That's the person that you always trust. And so a little child walks around going, okay, well, I'll just do this because it's Mommy's doing it to my brother, Uncle's doing it to my cousins. It's like the right thing to do. I guess it's okay. Even though internally, that child is tormented. They know, like, then why can't I go tell? If everybody in our family is doing this, why can't I go tell? And so carrying around that secret, just imagine walking into church. So
Share
many.
for you personally what that was like.
Well, for me personally, there was several times, because I was raised in a Catholic or Greek Orthodox religion.
Because that's an area I want people to understand, because often one of the reasons that we were such a controversial thing at that conference was there's a lot of, and our staff is, we have a lot of people of Christian faith, you're of Jewish faith, we all have different, but that conference, there was a lot of people that were like, you have to bring them into a faith-based setting, and when we stood up and said, we would never start like that, because so many were hurt in the name of God, dragged to church after they were abused, dragged to church after they were raped, and their parents made them pretend, or others, it was their youth pastor. We have lots of girls that things happen to them in a Christian school or in a church setting. So share what it's like and the confusion that comes there so people can understand, because our goal is to get everyone to walk in greater compassion and not feel like you have to help get them this to get them free.
Well, I mean, imagine, if you will, here you are, you're a young child, myself, for example, I had to have sex with my dad, and then I had to go into the Catholic Church or into the Greek Orthodox Church right afterwards. I mean, because I converted to Judaism about 30 years ago. And so imagine what that must be like with your mom in the choir. So here you are looking up at your mother, knowing you betrayed her in the most unbelievable way you could ever betray your mother, whether she knew what was going on or not. And then to have to sit there in front of God, next to this person that just sexually abused you, and not really knowing as a child, is this really right what just happened to me? Is it really wrong? And then, where's God? If God's supposed to be walking alongside of me through my whole path of life, where's God right now? Why wasn't God with me? Why didn't God stop it? And so many of the girls and women that we serve, and boys and girls, they all ask that same question. So imagine, if you're questioning that, if you're questioning where was God? Why did God let this happen to me? Why did I have to have all this for all my years? Why did I become a drug addict and addicted to sex and everything else? Imagine when people start saying, you have to believe. You have to be a believer. How can you be a believer? So what do? We introduce them. We don't say, oh, you don't have to ever believe in God or Jesus Christ or whoever a higher power is for you, but let them do it at their own pace. Let them kind of start, building like, you mean the reason I survived is because God really was there, really had my hand and really had my shoulders and was behind me walking this path.
It's beautiful. It's so sad because I think people don't realize that that's the core. And a little girl doesn't know what to do with all that.
That was my Savior. My Savior, when I got that and I believed that the reason I survived was because God really was there with me the entire time. And maybe I was chosen. I wouldn't be here today. maybe I was chosen so I could go out and do the incredible work that I do. And that's what I want other people to get. But more importantly, that's what I want survivors to know.
And that's why we definitely don't, people will say, well, do you make them sign, a lot of organizations have them sign a statement of faith, or we don't, because these girls have been told what to do, how to do it, where to do it, and we want them to have that muscle of choice built up so that they know who they are and what they want. Another big piece that people get really confused about, and I'm going to let you talk about this a little bit, is it's our culture. We have gotten so normalized in the area of sex, sexuality, explicit sexual scenes in all kinds of television, pornography. You give us a quote about what a magazine article was then is equal to, or what's that?
Well,
what do you say?
Because what I talk about is that my dad was raped over a pornography magazine. We're going to talk back in the late 30s. So pornography back in the late 30s are what our fashion ads are today. And this man became a serial sex offender and was so addicted to pornography. So imagine, how does anyone really have a chance today?
So that's what our children are looking at every day, everywhere they go. They go to the mall and they walk past something and they see that. So Kinsey, help people understand, because I think you have a good understanding of this, because I'm with you a lot when we talk to law enforcement or to different leaders in the community. And in the beginning, not as much anymore, but in the beginning we heard a lot, well, we don't really have that going on, but we have a lot of really, high-class escort services, and we have some strip clubs, and those aren't bad. And I think that's not by fault of the individual. I think that's lack of understanding of what happens beyond the closed doors, what people don't see necessarily. So maybe help people, because you work so often with the girls that are coming out of both of those situations, to help people understand what that full picture does really look like.
Well, there's two different avenues. So the first would be that sex sells. So we're starting younger and younger to get into looking at pornography and what does that mean. And so on one side, we're seeing that our children are exposed to it a lot more than they used to be. I'm looking at TV shows that are just on mainstream cable that's just very over-sexualized. Nowadays, if you go to the mall, how children are dressing, we just live in a culture that's over-sexualized. And because of that, it's easier to get into porn, looking at porn, addicted to porn. I've talked to so many men that look at porn, and it just, because of what it does chemically to us, it's the same thing as a drug addiction. It's that much more easier to buy sex. And so it's really creating a safe, way where the traffickers are insured people to keep coming and buying sex over and over again, because of how much pornography is selling. But on the other end of that, what we're seeing is pornography isn't a victimless crime either. Pornography is something where we're seeing over and over again someone in pornography that's actually being forced, coerced, to sell themselves on film, to have sex against their will on film. And so that as well is an avenue of trafficking. And so starting to really understand, the more women we talk to that have been put online against their will, it's another form of pornography. So you can't really watch pornography anymore and not support the sex trafficking.
Are you seeing that here, Kinsey? Are you saying that some of the local girls that you work with are telling you that they were forced to be videoed?
Yes, we just, back in March, we had in Sarasota, we had 2 girls that were forced to be online. I won't give credit to where you can go online and buy this, but
Thank you.
Yes, they were forced to go online, and they had nude pictures, and they said without their consent it was put up online, and those pictures will be there forever. And so, they're being sold, and their pictures are being looked at, and men are able to, and women, look at those pictures over and over and over again without these people's consent.
And think about how scary that is, how much of a slippery slope for our own children. We all have, or many of us have children on our staff, and now with the use of iPhones and videos and immediate sending it to millions, and knowing that this is now, I think the stats change every second, but a $32 billion industry selling human beings, which drugs is $36 billion, so we're not far behind with the sale of our own human beings, which is crazy. What do you say to parents? I mean, I still have some people that their dad's like, yeah, when he gets, 17, 18, I'll take him to his first strip club and, break them in, welcome to manhood. And we've seen these girls that tell us what they had to do in those clubs, and they tell us what they're forced to do in that back room, and how much money they got and handed over to somebody else. Which one of you wants to share? I just want people to understand, like, those girls out there, they're beautiful, and I think men think, oh my gosh, I'm helping them, I'm giving them money. And we're not like the party crashers here, but we're sort of saying, look again.
Right. Well, I think that if men, and I'm not just going to say men.
No,
I'm
because
going to say,
women, a lot
there's
of
a
women
lot
are
of
really
women
into
too.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just going to say, so if people just really look at, like, that's a human being, that's a real life person. But what if they really looked at, like, that could be my own child, maybe my own grandchild. Now I know that I'm going to kind of contradict myself here, because at the same time we have so much incest. Incest is on such a rise. So it's kind of hard, because someone could be looking, oh, that's my daughter. Oh, I kind of like that. You know, so I'm like, oh, maybe I should not say that. But on the other hand, it's about looking at, that's a human, that's a person. That's not a commodity. And that's what's really happened, I believe, in today's society, is that we aren't looked at human beings anymore. We are looked at as a commodity. And what can I do? And we also don't look at it feelings. We don't. How much do we really talk about people's feelings? We don't, right? We talk about anything else but to really have that conversation.
I think about what Kinsey said about there's a chemical reason, and I find this fascinating. My background as a clinician, I know there's studies around this, and it's so bizarre, and I think if more people understood it. You said that when people use pornography, or if they indulge in something with a paid encounter, whatever you want to say, when we have, this is our speaking dangerously here, when we have an orgasm, right? Do you know that when people have an orgasm, a chemical is released called oxytocin? And oxytocin literally is the same chemical that's released when a mother is nursing her baby.
Right.
It's a bonding chemical. And this is what's so bizarre, is that people don't realize when that chemical is released and they're staring at a screen, that they're bonding with nothing.
They're bonding with the screen.
With an image. When they're doing it with some girl on the street that they don't want to know, they're bonding with something they don't want to know. And then people are wondering, like, why are 50% of our marriages and more ending in divorce? You know, we're sort of deadening ourselves. So we're raising our children just by looking at what your father saw as pornography before he was raped and became a, you know, his life unfolded. That's the norm of what we're raising people in this world. And if we don't, as a community, wake up and say, oh my gosh, how do we band together? Because those girls on the street are a product of what's being multiplied exponentially going forward. It's only getting worse. So when you think about the pornography piece and the girls that you deal with and the men that, you know, you have to be there when the police are, because Kinsey has the privilege of being out on the street with the cops, and maybe share any stories that, you know, help to bring to mind what these girls go through out there and what it looks like, and any stories about maybe where, you know, a man doesn't know what he's doing. Because we're not here to bash people, but we want to help them see what is seen as innocence is not.
Yes, I think the biggest thing is really starting to give these women a voice and understanding that they didn't start out there by choice. And a lot of times they're still not out there by choice. And so it is becoming more known, and the police are speaking up, and they're starting to say no more in our city, and therefore the Johns are starting to know that, because the buyers are called Johns, and the Johns go out there, and I think it's easier if you go to a strip club or if you go and buy a woman and you don't know. But once you know, then it's a choice you have to make, that you're actually participating in sex trafficking. That's a whole nother world. And so I think over and over and over, you know, we hear, you know, there's one woman in specific who talked about all the pornography that she was exposed to at such a young age, and how it was just so normal, and how much she loved sex, and how she thought, you know, that she could go on the streets and sell herself at 11 years old because, you know, that was normal. And so I think just understanding the culture we're in and the norm we're in, and that it's not normal. And so also understanding that they're going out onto the streets and using drugs to numb themselves. And so if we understand the full circle of this, then we can really start to combat the issue.
I love that. Sarasota Police Department asked me to come in with Kinsey not too long ago, and they said, we just want to applaud the great job that Selah Freedom is doing in partnership with law enforcement. They said that they've seen crime go down 40% in the last year. They're like, we can't say it's all because of Selah, but it's because these issues are coming to the light and the community is working together, and it's pretty tremendous. So it's really cool to see there's a difference being made because people are seeing it differently.
Yes.
So Connie, should we go into the other unspeakable? You know, people always are like, oh, you're going to talk about that?
Which one?
But the other one that came up at the conference we were at, abortion,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
People know that, you know, as Selah Freedom, we can't say, man, our girls have never gone through that. That's horrible. And we know from our own personal lives, things happen. You had a journey and abortion's a symptom. It's an outcome. So share a little bit to help people understand that issue and why almost every woman we work with will have had at least one.
Well, I just want to share this. I remember the gasp in the room because you spoke before I did. She really said about abortion. And then I got up and then I got up and said, I had one, I've had two. And people were like, what?
Well, let's remind them. Okay, so you weren't there, so let us remind you. What happened was people were standing up and they're saying, human trafficking is wrong. And, you know, and in the same breath, they were saying, and homosexuality is wrong, and abortion is wrong, and we need to bring all these people to the light, and we need to lead them to truth, and it's just not acceptable, any of these.
Right.
And having worked with victims, as we do, and you being a victim, I got to speak before you, I stood up and said, I'm just confused or wondering if anybody here has ever met a survivor, because I don't think I've met one that doesn't think she is homosexual. She doesn't know. She had no voice or choice in having an abortion. I would say most of them said it was forced on them, and it was a form of birth control for their trafficker or their pimp or their dad.
Or it was another form of control.
Yeah.
You know, or you looked at, you want me to have this child that you just impregnated me with, like, really? Or, you know, I was raped over this and you want me to carry this on. I get it. I totally understand it's a life and we're not supposed to kill someone. But on the other hand, imagine, first of all, victims are going to be survivors walk around the rest of their life with what happened to them. So then imagine having to also bring a child into this world and having to look at that child. Look, we're all human, right? And so could you imagine how, I could not do it. I know for me personally that the thought of having to bring a child into this world was not going to work. And so how can you condemn someone?
And
how can
so
you say
many of
someone
them had
walking
no
in the shoes?
choice.
Well, you don't have a choice. And
Nobody
like I
had
said,
choices that we worked with.
It was
taken
really
from them.
another form of control. And that's what we really have to have a conversation about one day, that control.
Well, and specifically locally here, we see over and over again women that are impregnated by their pimp or trafficker. And so for us to actually sit back and come alongside them in that journey and offer them choices is huge. They're never offered choices. They're told what to do, when to do, or they're beaten up and the baby's gone, or they're forced to get an abortion. And so really just loving them through this process and letting them come to that decision is just a beautiful thing. I've heard over and over again by women just say, we can't believe you didn't tell us what to do. We can't believe you just loved us through it. And so it's amazing. And we partner with amazing pregnancy centers around town that get that too. And so for all of us to get that message and just love them through it speaks volumes to them.
I think that's the thing, like speaking dangerously, we chose that topic because really we're bringing up the tough topics, but we're bringing them up in the context of love, because they're not bad topics if you're willing to get honest with them. And if you're willing to think, what would they look like if there was nothing but a filter of love around it? And how different would that be? How different would it be if we took a step back and said, before I make one statement, I'm gonna just look at this person and let myself stop and love them after everything they've been through? Then doors open. And I think that's sort of why we brought up this Speaking Dangerously. So if you guys want to each just share one thing to close, if you want to leave our viewers with, you know, remember this, because you're all touched.
I just want to say, you know, God, Jesus Christ, whoever your higher power is, walks with love, doesn't walk with condemning. And with that said, like, love, look, be loving to somebody, but more importantly, really look at what shoes, what path, what footprints did they really have to walk through this journey to get and stand before them today? Because the real person that we have to stand before is someone that's up above.
And since she took that approach, I'm going to say,
Take yours.
no, I'm going to say, let's as a community, let's wake up. Let's say no. Let's say no to pornography. Let's say no to looking at children, boys, girls, women, online, on TV. And let's as a community not go to strip clubs anymore. And let's say no. Let's say we understand that this is human trafficking and we're not going to tolerate it anymore.
That's awesome. Because you know what? In those trips, because I always have people come to me and say, but I know a girl that works there and it's getting her through college. It's the best money. And I said, give me 5 minutes with her. If I spend 5 minutes loving her, I'll probably hear a story that you have no idea she went through that made her make that choice. Just give me 5 minutes. And I like the idea of, as a community, let's wake up. And one of the things that we always try to do is, like, whenever we speak, especially, you have schools, you have churches that are with our kids for great periods of time, the synagogues. If those places started learning how to look at children and ask those questions that, man, I bet you wish you were asked by somebody that could have loved you right and taken you away from that and protected you. What if we train up our community to speak dangerously and look again and ask those hard questions of a child? Gosh, are you okay? Is there anything you need to talk about? Because if the numbers are 1 out of 3 little girls and 1 out of 5 little boys across the spectrum, it doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what faith, it doesn't matter what neighborhood, because people always like to say, well, that's really in this part of town, right? And I'm like, no. Because Connie, what sort of environment did you grow up in? Just
upper middle class. Grew up on the water. Had
Tampa.
boats, yep, in Tampa. Great subdivision.
Upscale.
Area,
And
Doesn't
you've
matter.
met
Doesn't
girls?
look at that.
Oh yeah, I've got them split from low income to high income to college degrees. Yeah, all over the place.
Yeah. So it's the whole spectrum, and we want people to know that. And it's the reason that we chose the topic today. If you guys can work with us, partner with us, care about the issue, there's so many ways. It doesn't matter what your talent is, what your gift is. You can go to our website. It's on the screen right now, selahfreedom.com, and just take a look at what we do. Maybe you want to host a party to tell your friends. Maybe you want to attend an event. We have some great events. We have a 5K coming up in October. Be part of that. And we just invite you to make a difference. And most importantly, I think we would all agree, have a voice. We want you to speak dangerously, because when you've worked with these children and these young women, as we have, they never had a voice. And you know what? No one ever spoke up for them. And so if you would be willing to raise your voice and take a chance and speak dangerously, you could change the world. And we want to partner with you to do it, because these girls are worth it. Those young boys out there are worth it. And let's give them a voice. So stay tuned and join us again next week or next episode when we talk dangerously some more on even more topics. Thank you, guys.